What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to break down some big news involving President Trump that just came out as he's imposing more tariffs out there, what you should be watching for as time goes on as we're seeing some new developments. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, as far as the market's going, looking at SPY on the 4-hour time frame, we got a bit of rejection so far because of some new pieces of news. SPY is at critical support right now at this 619 area, and we have to hold this to try to continue to bounce. If we can't hold this, there's going to be a risk of even more downside. And we did talk about a potential sell-off move in my video from yesterday and today, but I was thinking that even if we do sell off a bit, the market could still bounce. For now, we do still hold that view because if anything, we're still technically bullish, making higher highs and higher lows. But even if the market does dip a bit more, right, we're going to be watching to see if a bottom could form if the market wants to hold a key support. That's going to be very important. But for now, the market is a bit weaker after what President Trump just announced. So we're going to talk about what he just said and also break down these charts in just a couple of minutes. As a reminder, some of the top trading partners of the US are Mexico, Canada, China, Germany, and many other countries. We're seeing these countries scrambling to come up with deals with the US. We have our Treasury Secretary Bessent saying that in the next 48 hours, there's going to be lots of deals to be made because of what President Trump is doing. So President Trump has a very interesting strategy. His strategy is to basically threaten very high tariffs on these countries again. And as a result, he wants to see them form deals or else they're going to be facing the consequences of these high tariffs. So what happened was back in April, President Trump announced his reciprocal tariffs. Then he basically announced a 90-day pause. Okay, the 90-day deadline would be July 9th. But as of right now, President Trump just signed an executive order to basically extend the deadline to August 1st. I'll talk about that in just a second. And right now, President Trump's move is to just announce a lot more tariffs. So he is changing the tariffs to some extent. For example, like Cambodia, they were going to be imposed with a 49% tariff before. Now it's going to be 36%. Other countries like Laos and many others also have some similar moves around 40% tariffs. Also, President Trump announced a 25% tariff on goods from Japan and South Korea beginning on August 1st, and 25% tariffs on Malaysia and Kazakhstan and many other countries, 30% on South Africa. So keep that in mind. He also has been saying this for quite a while, and as a result, we're seeing both Japan and South Korea coming out and saying they want to negotiate a deal as soon as possible because of these high tariffs that are about to be imposed. President Trump has also been announcing other things, such as the fact that if any countries aligned with anti-American BRICS organization, if they are aligned with that, basically, then they're going to be facing an additional 10% tariff. And then we also have some things from his transcripts. I'm going to read some of the things that President Trump has said. He's been announcing new tariffs that range between 25% and 36% on Cambodia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Tunisia, and many other countries. And then he went on about that, how he's going to be imposing more tariffs. He's been talking about that. He also said that South Korea has upcoming trade negotiations to make, but he is declaring a 25% tariff for now. He also talked about how he would love to see us boost our partnership with Japan and South Korea. In the past, he said that he's not really happy with the way the US has been negotiating with Japan. He's not happy that Japan has not been accepting US rice exports and that they should do a better job. He did mention that. And then he said that he just repeated the same things about these tariffs, and then he signed an executive order which extends the tariff deadline to August 1st. So that's some big news that just came out a couple of minutes ago. So that's what has been saying so far. So that's like a summary of a lot of the things that he has said very recently. This is his Truth Social post about that. He said any country aligning themselves with anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff. There will be no exemptions to this policy. So that's something that he's saying right now. So keep in mind, now we're seeing a lot of countries like in the European Union, the countries that make that up, are trying to make a very, very quick trade deal with the US because they want to lock a 10% tariff. They're not happy if we see a big increase relative to before. So we want to see how that's going to go, at least so far. That's what we're hearing about. Secondly, there's been some news about how, with everything that's going on, President Trump has been imposing higher tariffs on South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, and many other countries like that. Keep in mind that outside of its production in China and Vietnam, many countries such as like Appl, they've been sourcing from suppliers based in Japan, South Korea, Kazakhstan, South Africa, and many other countries. So this is going to be affecting them a lot. They've already named a lot of these countries for higher tariffs so far, unless we see some kind of new trade deals. The US Treasury Secretary is saying that there's going to be a lot of deals coming in the next 48 hours. So we'll see how that ends up affecting the markets. So you want to be very careful just to be safe. Last but not least, there's been some news involving Elon Musk. As you guys know, he's had a feud with President Trump, and now he's forming a new political party. He calls it the American Party, or the America Party to be more precise. He said this after criticizing President Trump's spending bill, and then as a result, President Trump is now criticizing Elon, saying that he's going off the rails. And he also said that he's questioning Tesla and Elon's subsidies as a result of that. So that's what President Trump has been saying. He's very frustrated with Elon Musk for doing this, and Elon Musk is getting very involved in politics, which is what many analysts and investors have said they don't really like. They've expressed dismay about this, right? They want Elon Musk to be less involved in politics and focus more on Tesla. That's why Tesla took a big hit. That's one of the main reasons, alongside the EV mandate being negated. Now, and keep in mind that going into tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. We have the Business Optimism Index report at 6 a.m., which is not too important, not too crazy. Consumer inflationary expectations at 11 a.m., then some bill and note auctions at 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mostly minor data, nothing too crazy. But then I think we have the FOMC minutes on Wednesday. So it's not typical FOMC. It's simply just a report about FOMC, which could cause a lot of volatility on Wednesdays. That's the next time we have some big data coming out. Until then, much of the data is quite minor, and the market's reacting more to President Trump and his tariffs. Greed makes up the majority of sentiment right now. We're going to see if we are still at extreme greed or not. Momentum's at greed. We're going to see if that slows down or not. The put to call option ratio has been dipping. We're going to see if this bounces or not off support. And then the VIX is neutral, not to mention other things like this. So we're going to see how this ends up going. Market is still kind of neutral as we're seeing a lot of chop, but at the same time, we're dipping to some extent. We're going to see if support holds. This is what the earnings calendar looks like overall. Nothing way too serious. But tomorrow, that's when we start some earnings. I think it gets more serious starting next week. So with that being said, let's now focus a lot on what's happening with the charts. As you guys can tell, SPY is looking more bearish, but it depends on if we end up losing support here or not. We're at this support at the 20 EMA on the 4-hour time frames. The green line right here is our support near 619. So if we could bounce and break 622, we're looking for a nicer, bigger rebound move. If we get back above 622, I think this could try to push back up towards these highs over here. If 622 breaks, that's the more bullish case. The bearish case is going to be that we kind of consolidate and then we end up losing not only 619, but if we can't hold that, I think there's going to be a risk of us testing not only the low of the day, but coming down to like 616 to 615, this range down here. This is going to be support. It's also resistance becoming support. That's going to be the next main support in case SPY does get a big rejection. And if we lose that, if 615 fails us, then yes, I think SPY could dip all the way down towards this yellow line here, which is going to be around 612 or below for a bigger decline. There's also a gap to fill down here, so that would take us all the way down to much lower levels, taking us down towards like 610. That's the more bearish case. Now, I'm in the middle, honestly. And honestly, guys, I can't predict everything President Trump will say or announce. If there's suddenly a big deal with India that's announced, the market could bounce out of nowhere. So you can't always predict everything. So please give me some give me some slack in case, things don't always go as we predict, because we can't predict everything President Trump will say. However, given the current trend, what's very probable is that we continue to chop like this, and we may even dip just a little bit closer to 615 to 616. I think that we might be dipping to this range where this EMA happens to be, which is going to trend upwards and then that 616 range. And then we could be looking for a bounce after that. I'm looking for a move like that as the most likely possibility. I think that the current setup on the 4-hour and the daily is looking more bearish, and we are favoring downside a little bit more as we're seeing SPY getting a rejection move. So we could touch 616 or so, and then we're going to see if we bounce or not off of that. Tomorrow morning, we might start off with like a gap up, maybe some consolidation, then maybe slow down just a little bit again. Then we'll see if we bounce off 616 or not, depending on what President Trump ends up announcing. But that's what I'm seeing, at least so far, at least for the time being. That's what's the most likely possibility. On the QQQ, it's the same thing. Now, if we get back above this 555 area, we're looking for a big bounce towards new all-time highs. But if we end up losing 550, we're looking for a dip down towards 548. If 548 fails us, we're looking for a much bigger decline to 544, which is where this previous resistance becoming support is going to be. So break 555, we're really bullish, and lose 548, we're more bearish, especially if 544 fails us, we're looking for a bigger decline. My gut tells me we're going to consolidate right here in the low 550s, and then there's going to be some kind of downside move. We were correct yesterday and even today about how we were seeing a temporary sell-off, but it might not be, super sustainable depending on what's announced. There's going to be a risk of us testing 548 or so on the QQQ, and then we're going to see if we bounce off that or not. So that's what I'm looking for, at least so far, a little bit more of a decline. And we'll see how it ends up going, but I do think there's an imbalance down here between 546 and 548, and I could see us declining to at least 548 or below. So keep that in mind. On the IWM, we're showing some weakness. We're struggling to hold above 219.5. If that holds, we're looking for 222. And if it doesn't hold, we could continue to decline back down towards 216. So we have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. And this could be declining all the way down to 216. There's a good chance we do decline a bit more as we have kind of like a head and shoulders like pattern. We'll see if they grab liquidity and they give us a small push towards like 220, then reject us. May consolidate like this. If we're above 222, though, we could be pushing a lot higher. But if we can't hold above 222, I'm looking for a possible head and shoulders here for a temporary decline before this tries to bounce again. Looking at ES, we're also declining a bit. As you could tell, we kind of rejected, made a lower high and rejected. Now, if we get back above 62.80, we're looking for a big rebound move. But if we can't do that, this may continue to decline all the way down to 62.37. That's going to be very key for how we end up moving. So we had a high here, we came down, we made a lower high and we came down, and then we could be dipping all the way down to about 62.37. And we'll see if we bounce off that or not. Overall, though, we're making lower highs and we're continuing to reject. So look for some consolidation and move right back down. On NQ, we're also doing the same thing. We had a high here, we came down, we had a lower high, and we came down. Now, if we're bought back up above that 23,000 area, we're looking for a nice rebound move. But if we can't get back above 23,000, I do anticipate some consolidation and possibly a test of like 22,738. That's going to be our 50 EMA, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. So keep that in mind, especially as time goes on. For Bitcoin, we had a high here, came down, made a lower high, and we're continuing to decline right here. In my personal opinion, I think that we're showing some weakness. We have this resistance around 108,400 to bounce. If we can't hold above that, we're going to likely continue to fall all the way down towards 106,000. So I think the odds are favoring the lower high to be made here and a potential rejection as we're making lower highs. So Bitcoin is favoring 106,800 just for the time being. Now, Tesla's trying to get bought back up. It's trying to hold 290, which is a decent sign. But when you zoom out of Tesla, as you guys could tell, we have this, a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. Now, if Tesla gets back above 300, there is a gap to fill, and this could try to rebound. There could be an attempt to rebound to 306. But if we come short and if we can't hold above 300, I think we try to push to like 296 to 298 or so, and we consolidate like this. But if we can't get back above 300, then the odds still favor us dipping towards like 285 or below. Once again, continuing this much larger head and shoulders that still remains. So I am in the middle. I think we consolidate for a little bit longer. We might even try to go a little higher tomorrow morning for basically 296 to 298, but then there's going to be a risk of us rejecting if this continues to fail. On Nvidia, we're looking kind of weak right now. I see a test of us potentially coming back down towards 156. We're going to see if we bounce or not. As of right now, we're looking a bit more bearish. So look for a test of 156 and we'll see if buyers defend. Overall, it's showing some weakness. So I do see a small decline on Nvidia, very small one. Apple has some bad news. There's going to be higher tariffs imposed on a lot of their important, trading partners, right? We see them export lots of products from Vietnam, from China, from Japan, South Korea, and the list goes on. Now, if we break 212, we could try to bounce higher, but if we can't hold 209, I expect us to dip to 205 or below, and I think the odds favor 205 on Apple, so keep that in mind. On Netflix, we're just consolidating. We're very, very tight right now, and I think we're going to likely continue to get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter like this. And then we're going to see if we break out higher or lower, depending on how things end up going. Look for some consolidation and potentially a downside move, and we're going to have to see how it goes from there. We're just going to get very, very tight until we see a breakout, and it could go either way, depending on how things end up going. For MSTR, if we end up losing 395, we're going to be dipping back down to 389 or below. If we break resistance right here around 400, we're looking for a big rebound. Overall, we're dipping and consolidating, but there's going to be a risk of us dipping all the way down to 389. On Celsius, we have a nice kind of like head and shoulders. Now, if we lose 45.09, we're looking for a dump back down to 44 or below. But if we end up breaking past this like 47 area, we're looking for a big rebound. We could be dipping all the way down towards this imbalance around the lower 44s or below. So keep that in mind, as this could be like a head and shoulders. I think we're going to test 45.09, if not all the way down towards 43.5. We're going to have to see how it goes from there. For Supermicro, we're making lower highs all over again. So if this fails at 46.6, we're looking for a much larger dump all the way down towards 44.69. If we break resistance at 47.8, we're going to see how it goes. We had a high here, came down, and a lower high came down, and a lower high came down. So this is once again looking kind of weak, so please keep that in mind. When it comes to Palantir, we're forming a nice accumulation. We're trying to rebound right here. We're going to see how it ends up going here at 136. If we end up losing the support, we could be dipping lower, but if this bounces, we're going to see how it goes. So watch and see what happens off 136, and then we're going to see if we rebound. For Rivian, we're also making lower highs here. As you can tell, we're making lower highs and lower lows. Might rebound towards just the low 13 area before it tries to reject. But overall, we're technically on a downtrend. So if we touch near 13, we could be dipping all the way down to the lower 12s. SoFi remains bullish, like we were talking about yesterday. As long as we don't lose 18.22, we're favoring the attempt to get to 20. Looks good so far, quite bullish. AMD has an inverse cup and handle, so it's looking kind of weak. Unless it gets back above 137.64, we're favoring a move all the way down towards 132.5. We also have a head and shoulders on ARM. Now we need to reclaim 152. If we can't do that, the odds are going to be favoring 143 or below, so the odds do favor the downside move. On PayPal, we basically have 75.59 as our main support. If this doesn't hold, we could be dipping all the way down to like 74, and we're going to see if we bounce off these levels or not. For Coinbase, we have an inverse head and shoulders, but if we lose 350, we could be declining back down to fill this gap at 340. But if we hold 351, we could try to bounce. As of right now, we're holding up, so this might slowly try to rebound for the 362 plus area. So there's potential in it if that holds. Amazon showing weakness. We like to reject near 225, and we like to get bought back up around 218. This is favoring 221. We're going to see how it goes from there. Meta has a resistance over here around this 722 area. And we have support at 713. I think the odds are favoring 713. We're going to see how it ends up going here, so be very careful. On Google, we had a high here, came down with a lower high. We have to see if we reclaim 180 to bounce. If not, we could be dipping to 176 or below. So I think the odds favor 176 to 175. And we'll see if buyers defend. Microsoft is rejecting here. We're looking for basically 495 or below, if not 491. We're favoring 495 on Microsoft. I think we're going to be testing that again, and we're going to see if it bounces off that. Keep in mind the tariffs will be affecting their components, and I want to see what happens with Taiwan. I think Taiwan is going to be very important. The VIX, if we end up losing essentially 17.62, we have a gap to fill way down here. If this holds, though, we have a gap to fill above, so it could go either way. But as of right now, it's favoring upside a little bit more, looking at the 4-hour and our daily time frames. This is favoring upside a little bit more, as the market could see a little bit more of a decline. The 10-year is kind of flat. It's going to be affected by the FOMC minutes. The dollar is also starting to uptrend a bit, which tends to be a little bit more bearish for markets, especially as we have an inverse head and shoulders, which may continue to uptrend this. And then finally, crude is starting to climb a little bit. We'll see how that ends up affecting inflation as time goes on, but right now it's just minor. So honestly, guys, the market looks a little bit weaker. We're favoring downside a bit more given all this talk about new tariffs. But once the market prices a lot of this in, we're going to be fine, and it could bounce very, very nicely because the overall trend, it's bullish. We're still technically bullish. We're still technically making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, and higher lows. But there is a temporary sell-off right now, and we could sell off a bit more looking at the current trend. Now, it depends on what President Trump says. Any announcement could cause the market to go either way. For example, if we get more tariffs, if President Trump announces higher tariffs, or if something happens, that could cause the market to dip more. But if President Trump announces a big, awesome trade deal with India, that could cause the market to bounce, right? So it all depends on what he says. As of right now, given what we're seeing and what we're hearing and what we're seeing on the charts, the odds favor a bit more downside. We might see a temporary dip down. We could see SPY dip a couple more points towards that like 515 to the 615 to 616 area down here. If we don't hold above 619, then we'll see if we bounce. The QQQ may do the same thing, may dip a bit more, and we're going to see if buyers defend. So with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please be very careful in a market like this, because we're reacting to a lot of news that's coming out in real time, and you can't always predict everything. That's why I would recommend managing risks and then simultaneously utilizing stop losses and just being very careful with your trades. But nonetheless, I wish you all the best. Take care, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow before the market opens. And keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of announcements still coming. We have our Treasury Secretary saying that in the next 48 hours, we're expecting a lot of potential trade deals, big announcements. So be prepared just to be safe, and we'll see what the market does. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll keep you guys updated on any pieces of news that come out. Until then, have a good one, and peace out.